Sometimes life goes a little off course. That's why you need a podcast host that can go a little off topic. This is the podcast that will give you straight talk about everything life throws at you. Welcome to another episode of Off Topic with Tom Powell. And here he is. This is Tom Powell.
Well, I have a few things I want to discuss with you, and we're going to cover a wide range of topics.
Cool.
One of the things that I want to discuss with you right off the bat, we can discuss it, we get it out of the way, is I think you and I grew up in somewhat of similar circumstances in that we came from families that didn't have a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We came from poor upbringings. Now, I came from a family where everything was a hand-me-down.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was broken. The wind whistled through the house in the wintertime, and you had to wait for Christmas to get a new pair of pants because there just wasn't any money, and we were on a lot of government assistance when I was a kid. I hear you talking in your videos about that type of upbringing that you had. How did you fight past? Because a lot of people say, you're a product of your environment, right? You start out poor, you're going to wind up being poor. You start out rich, you're going to wind up being rich. But that is really not necessarily the case.
Yeah. We were fortunate. My mom, so my dad was abusive to my mom. And so really we had moved a lot of times away from him in Louisiana. And because I grew up in Louisiana, New Orleans, Louisiana, we had moved away from him a lot. And then, he always found us, moved back in with us. And so one day my mom said, you know what, we're going to get out of here. We're going to move. And my uncle had been in the military, and he got a job at the Lawrence Livermore Lab after being in the military as a base police officer, basically. And he bought a home in this small town in California. And we jumped on the plane in the middle of the night, and we moved to California and moved in with him. And we were a poor family because he wasn't really poor, but my mom and my brothers and sisters were. But we were kind of a poor family living in a more affluent middle-class neighborhood. And, that's why I really talk about like the differences between growing up in a poor neighborhood and growing up in a more affluent neighborhood, because just the opportunities were better. And so just my mom being able to get us out of that environment and bring us, even though we were poor, we were getting a good education and we were pretty safe, so that's what kind of got us out of it, and then I started running track and field, and that got me a full scholarship to college. And so that's kind of how things changed, and that kind of changed the trajectory of my entire family and my daughters and everything. So
now, when you say you were poor, were you like, we had to go to bed hungry sometimes because there wasn't enough food poor?
No, I wouldn't say that. No, I would say when we lived in Louisiana, when we were basically on the run from my dad, I would say yes, there might have been times of that. But when we moved to California, my uncle provided, but we didn't ask for a lot. And then we moved out of the house. We moved out of his home. And when we moved, my mom just worked 3 jobs. She just did everything she could for us. And so she worked 3 jobs while I was in high school. Everyone knew my mom because she worked at the local gas station. She worked at the hospital, and she worked at another gas station. She just did everything she could. And so she kind of made a way for us. But we just, I grew up never asking for stuff. I didn't have high school yearbooks. I didn't have the nicest clothes and stuff like that, but I just knew just not to ask, so, but we did okay though. We did okay. And my brother and my sister, both, ended up going to college and doing well for themselves as well. So.
Now, see, we have a similar story, but it does diverge a little bit in that my mother was the abusive one, not my father, and it was towards me, not towards my father. So my parents got a divorce. I was the reason why my parents got married. My mother was a 16-year-old high school student, and my father was a 27-year-old drag racer, and he knocked her up.
Wow.
And I was the unwanted byproduct of a one-night stand. And so they were it was at a time where when that happened, you get married. And neither one of them really had any kind of a background that they could go out and earn a decent living on. So we were dirt poor. They had one more child, and then they got a divorce when I was 8. And then my mother just started, just beating the living hell out of me on the daily. And that lasted until the age of 13, when I actually ran away from her house. But we were poor to the point where we went to bed hungry a few times because there just wasn't enough. And that kind of broken environment, that kind of undesirable upbringing, and the fact that my family's shattered. So your mom left your dad in search of greener pastures because of abusiveness. My mom left, but she got my father drunk and had him sign some insurance papers, quote unquote, that turned out to be divorce papers, simply because he wasn't the kind of guy she wanted. Not because he was my dad worked 3 jobs to put a roof over our head. He busted his ass, but he wasn't what she wanted. So she divorced him. And when you add all of that up together, it's a reason why you and I share another trait, I believe, and that is I am huge into family at this point in my when I left, I sought out the stability that I never had. And when my wife and I got together and started having a family and started developing a family, growing a family, I was very adamant about, we need to stay in one place. We need to develop a home, a stable life. I want my kids to, there's no place that I can drive past as a 52-year-old man and go, that's where I grew up. But my 23-year-old daughter only knows this house. My 20-year-old daughter only knows this house. My 12-year-old son only knows this house. And so I hear you talk about the importance of family. And that really, that's what really drew me into your content, was the importance of family, because to me, that's everything at this point in my life.
Yeah, no, I can't agree with you more, man. I've taken my daughters and my wife to New Orleans, and we've gone to I had like a couple of different houses. We've gone to those houses, we've seen my neighborhood and everything, and people ask my daughters. I have a 23-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old daughter, or 19-year-old daughter, and people ask a lot, what both of them are very successful track athletes in college and stuff like that. And people ask about that. And I live in a small town, so a lot of people know us. And I tell them, they always ask, man, you raised your daughter so well. And I say, listen, man, the day that my wife got pregnant, I said, this is going to be the most important thing I ever do, is raise these daughters. They're going to know that their dad is like their best friend. He's the person they can lean on. And that's how I took this job. I took it as you look at the relationship that I have with my daughters, and it's great. And it's because I just decided, I didn't have a dad. There was no person there. And the dad duties were taken over either by my mom or some of my coaches, And so I wanted to be that, first of all, for my daughters. And then that's kind of followed my life as a coach, is being that, that father figure, that older brother to a lot of these student athletes that I have that have gone through kind of the same thing that I went through, So yeah, that's a big part of it for me. It's just, I was just going to be the best dad. It's almost like competition to me to be like the best dad I can be and stuff. I just, and so yeah, that was the importance of that job for me.
Do you have the white New Balance with the blue N on the side, like dads are supposed to be wearing?
My daughters would not allow that, man. That is I can't get away with anything, man. They get on me about everything. So I have to be on top of my game with what I wear, what I say. They're on me. So no, I do not get to wear New Balance. As a matter of fact, if they think that I'm wearing stuff that I'm starting to get too dad-like, they'll go out and buy me some clothes, man. If I get shoes and shirts for Christmas, I know that they decided the stuff I'm wearing ain't cool anymore.
Yeah, you're veering off into old man territory, and we can't have it.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't going to ask you this, but our daughters are about the same age. Like I said, I have a 33-year-old daughter, 34-year-old daughter that I discovered through DNA testing a couple of years ago that I did not have an opportunity to raise. So we're just getting to know her husband, and our two granddaughters as a result of that. That daughter. But my wife and I have three children together, and like I said, our oldest is 23, and our middle child is 20. So they're right about the same age as you. Do they ever get embarrassed by your status on TikTok? Did ever anybody go, I know your dad, and then they're like, oh, come on, I don't want to hear about it?
So they used to have that problem with me anyway because of my status as a track athlete, and as a coach, in the area. Like I ran pretty fast, went to college on a track scholarship, went to the Olympic trials, stuff like that. So they would already go places and hear that. I don't know if you realize, but when I first started doing TikToks, if you go back, we did a lot of like family dances and stuff like that together.
Oh, okay.
So they were doing it, but they all hate it, right? So I'd basically come home and be like, hey, I got an idea for a TikTok. Let's learn this dance. And they'd be like, oh, we don't want to do that. And I'd be like, okay, let's go in the backyard and do yard work instead. And they'd be like, oh, okay, we'll do the dance, And so my wife and my children, they are not at all like they're not social media type people. But once I started doing the more social justice stuff and I didn't ask them to get into that, they were really happy that I stopped doing the dancing and all that. But I'll tell you this, here's the funniest thing. I still run a little bit, right? I go to Masters Championships. So age group stuff, I run against older dudes my age and everything. So I'm at a meet recently and the guy's checking me in. And he's like, oh man, are you Taylor's dad? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, man, that girl is something, So like the tide have changed. Like the tables have turned. Now I'm their dad. Like people know them a little bit more than me. My status on social media, it's a little weird because in my small town, it's very conservative. I feel like a lot of people run into me. They know about it, but they don't bring it up. When it does come up, people be like, oh yeah, I see you on there too, I've had some friends from high school that I was really cool with that are pretty conservative come up to me and say, man, I see your stuff, and I respect you as a person. So I listen because I've known you for years and I know that you wouldn't say things to try and, mislead people or anything like that. So they're like, we disagree on a lot of things, but I respect your side of things and stuff like that, So no, honestly, my oldest daughter, she I mean, her opinions of this world is left of me. Like she is a social justice warrior, my second daughter is still like she's really into her sports and all of that, but she shares a lot of my videos on her social media. And so like no, it's a weird thing. Like they respect it because they really think that what I'm doing is like good stuff for the community and for the world. But they're just not into it. I mean, my daughter right now is in college, and her college keeps telling her to post more because with NILs and stuff like that, they're like, you need to post more, you need to build up your social media. And she's just like, I don't want to do that, And I'm like, you're leaving a lot of money on the table because you're not building up your social media platform. So because TikTok is so horrible lately, and I was looking at your page today, and they're just as bad with you when it comes to views and stuff. I've been considering wiping the whole thing and handing it over to her and letting her build it into her sports platform because I have 365,000 followers. I get no views anyway. So that's why I've kind of moved on to Instagram and YouTube a lot more. But that's beside the point right now. But yeah, so.
See, more things that we have in common. I live in a small suburb of Chicago in the far outreaches of Chicagoland, and it's very conservative. A lot of Trump signs in yards out here, a lot of Make America Great Again bumper stickers. And my 20-year-old, who just wrapped up her freshman year at UIC in Chicago, she makes me look like Reagan. Okay, she is so far left of me. Like the Supreme Court's going to be perfect when it's 9 women. She's all about the pronouns, and she's really into spreading the word on Gaza right now. So she makes me just look like conservative as all heck. But my 23-year-old, I get a kick out of her because, she's trying to find her way in life, and she's on some dating apps, and she'll meet a new guy on a dating app, and they'll talk over the phone or via text message, and he'll go, "Oh, you got to look at these videos from this guy I follow on TikTok," and then they'll wind up sending her my video, and she's like, "That's it, I'm done. I can't do this. I can't." And so, but you know what? It's that love hate, because for a while in her bio she called herself the oldest daughter of Tom Powell Jr. I was like, okay, so you're kind of embracing it a little bit.
Yeah.
Don't act like you don't like it. I mean, the spotlight comes and you like it. And as far as my 20-year-old, she got her job on campus by means of somebody that follows me. Somebody that follows me says, "Hey, I run such and such. We'd love to have your daughter on staff. We heard she's coming to UIC." And so, she's the one that gets to reap the benefits of having a dad with a large following, while the other one just runs around talking about how that's my dad, while pretending like she doesn't like it.
Yeah. Well, that's funny, man. Your daughters and my daughters would get along pretty well then, for sure. They'd get along, man. Especially my older one. Yeah, she's finishing up her master's degree right now at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and yeah, same thing, man. She probably does make me look like Reagan a lot of times. We used to have arguments that were, I mean, because I'm liberal, I'm progressive, but we would have arguments, and she would be like, "It's not enough." Like, she thinks me wanting to change things slowly, and like, she's like, "I think you do a good job because you're practical." She's like, "I don't want practicality. I want to freaking rip the whole thing apart and start over," and that's how she is. And I'm like, I don't think that's possible. So what I'm doing is just, I'm trying to change people, little by little. And she's like, "Cool, but I want to change people today." Like, she's like,
Yes.
I can't. She's like, I don't sleep well at night knowing that there are people who have been, hurt by this system of capitalism and all this stuff. So I love her, and she will recommend the best podcast to me and stuff like that. So I love the girl to death.
The younger generation, they truly do want to burn it down and start all over again. And my daughters as well. My far left leaning daughters, I have two that are very far left leaning, and they yell at, not yell, but they argue with me about capitalism all the time, because I'm a self-avowed capitalist. I'm liberal, but I believe in a capitalistic system that's heavily regulated, right? Let's make sure that the people who work in the system are taken care of. And as long as we can take care of people, we can have universal health care, we can have livable wages, we can have the kind of benefits that people need, then people like myself should be able to go out and start businesses and make money. And they come down on me about capitalism all the time until it's time to pay for them bills. Then that capitalistic money I bring in is just fine.
Exactly.
One of the things I've heard you talk a decent amount about, and I am very, very, very adamant about, is I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your belief is. My wife is a believer. I have one daughter that's an atheist. I have one daughter that's a pagan. I have one daughter that believes, in a God and a heaven. I don't care what your belief is. If it helps you be a good person, so be it. I will stand shoulder to shoulder with you and defend your right to your religious freedoms. Just keep it out of our laws. Keep it out of our law. Your religion doesn't get to dictate everybody's laws, just like my beliefs don't get to dictate everybody's laws. And it's something that you talk a lot about on your content. Could you touch a little bit about your viewpoint on that, please?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, learned to play the piano in church, am not a believer at all. I have very good arguments against why I'm not. And even when I talk to people who are firm believers about it, they're like, that's pretty compelling, And so, but what I tell them is this, kind of like you, I think if it makes you a good person, great. If your religion tells you that you should call transgender people weirdos and freaks, I don't like you or your religion. I have no respect for it. And at that point, I verbally stop respecting it. I articulate to you how much I don't like it, because once you open that door to me where you're saying these people are freaks and weirdos because your Bible says it, I'm done with you. I can't respect that. I wish people, and I've had a few of friends or associates of mine that have said things about, transgender people or gay people, and this whole thing about drag queens speaking in libraries, right? So my friend's talking about it. He's like, it's grooming the kids. I said, listen, bro, I have seen you at a football game with your son. I have seen you like look at your son and like pride because he's checking out the cheerleaders. So let's just admit that you don't really have a problem with grooming kids. You have a problem with gay people and transgender people, the LGBTQI plus community. And I said, as much as like, I'm a work in progress. I can admit that there are some things that still make me feel like, a little uncomfortable inside. And that is because like I grew up in a very heteronormative society that, if I'm being, very candid, like Black Southern Baptist people are very, very discriminatory against the LGBTQIA plus community. That's how I grew up. So I'm a work in progress. But what I will never do is, if a bad thought comes into my head, I tell myself, that's a bad thought. You shouldn't have that thought. You should try to think past that. You should be more open. What I won't do is articulate those horrible thoughts as in like thinking that it's okay to have that, or thinking that you should be imposing your beliefs on other people. I just, in my life, my world, my wife, my kids, we're just like, hey, let people live.
Yeah.
Period. Let them live. And so I have a huge problem with religion dictating legislation, anything like that. I don't want any part of it. And I will fight for your right to have a church, sit in that church, praise your God, whatever you want to do. But the second that you want to make your religion the law of the land, I will fight you tooth and nail not to allow that either.
Yeah, and it's something that I talk a lot about because it is, first of all, it's something that the people who founded this nation fought to get away from.
Yes.
And ironically enough, the people who claim to be the biggest supporters of the people who founded this nation are wanting to go right back to that kind of theocracy because it's their theocracy, because it's their religion. As long as it's their God, it's their religion, it's their religious text that's being taught in the schools, they have no problem with it. They don't want religious freedom for everybody. They want religious freedom for themselves. And so they try to do this through the legislative process. And much like you, so I'm 50, I am 52 years old. I'm a Gen Xer. I was born in the early 70s. I came of age in the 80s. It was very, I forget the word you use, heteronorm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my world. People used derogatory slang words towards people, gay people and trans people when I was coming up, and it was considered quote unquote normal. And so I try to understand everything that my children explain to me, that the younger generation brings to me, and I admit wholly to them that I don't understand all of it. I respect everybody's ability and belief to be what they are. I respect that people are born in the wrong bodies. I respect that people love differently, that people worship differently, that people do things differently than everybody else around you. But like you, I'm a work in progress. I had, unfortunately, and I think that you may have seen this in my content, I had that one additional layer in that I was raised by, on my mom's side of the family, it was Catholic. And on my father's side of the family, it was like born again Christian. But none of them were like really super religious. Like they went to church on the big days. They weren't to church all the time. But that added layer that I had coming up in my life was I wasn't only told that I was normal because I was straight, that I was the normal one because I looked at people from the opposite sex, but I had people telling me, and you're better than these people, you're better than these brown people, you're better than these black people, you're better than these women. I'm a straight white man that was raised in a world where I was taught that this is your world and everybody around you is inferior. And so I grew up believing that. I grew up thinking that somehow I was better because of this. And then I went out into the world and I realized, well, that's all bullshit. I mean, it took me a long time, but I got to meet all of the people who I thought I was inferior, or that were inferior to me. And I got to have relationships with people. And I looked around and I thought, none of the stuff that I have been taught to believe coming up is true, including the whole, as you are, I'm a non-believer. I'm an atheist. I call myself an agnostic atheist, in that I'm 99.9% sure there's not a God, but because I can't prove it, I have to throw that agnostic label in there. And so I, like you, I'm a work in progress. I will say something and my daughter will look at me and go, not cool, not cool. And I'm like, okay, explain to me why it's not cool. Don't just tell me it's not cool. Help me understand why it's not cool, because you got to understand, I came from a time when that was the norm. We didn't think twice about this word or that viewpoint or whatever the case may be. I've explained to my daughter that, in my opinion, and it's my mindset that I can't get past, you're either straight, you're gay, or you're bi. And she's like, no, there's all this other stuff. And I go, well, okay, pick one. She'll pull out something, pan or some poly or whatever. What does this person do? And she'll explain it to me. And I'm like, okay, then they're bi. Because either you are attracted to the same sex, or attracted to the opposite sex, or attracted to both sex. And I know that's a simplistic way of boiling it down, but in my mind, that's how I boil all of it down. And I'm cool with all of it. I don't give a rat's ass what you do in your bedroom, because it's none of my business. I don't care what you do in your bedroom. I don't care what you do in your kitchen. I don't care what you do in your living room. It's none of my business, as long as what you're doing is A, not hurting your kids, and B, not hurting anybody outside your house. As long as that's the case, then we should all be fine. We should all be able to get along.
Shouldn't it be that easy?
It should be. But why isn't it?
I think religion. This is where I really I would have a hard time if my wife was religious, because I feel like there are things that we discuss where it's like, so I just feel like if you take away religious beliefs, you take away a lot of judgment. You take away a lot of reason for people to want to look at someone else and say what they're doing is wrong and what I'm doing is right. Like, I don't live like my judgment now of people is almost zero, because there's no book or being telling me that there's a right way and a wrong way to live. The only wrong way to live to me is by hurting kids or hurting other people, like you're saying. Other than that, if you're not hurting someone, like, and imagine this for a second too, like, I can't imagine if someone could come into my bedroom, your bedroom. I think everyone does whatever the hell they want to do. And I don't think any of us would want our bedroom antics to be exposed or whatever. And so think that way. I think of people when they're judging people. I'm like, think that way, because would your Bible actually be okay with every single thing you've ever done in your bedroom? And I would have to say no. And so I just think, like, mind your own business. And I think back to what you're saying, why I think it has a lot to do with, we've been programmed to believe that everything is black and white, right? You're either good because you follow these 10 commandments in this Bible, or you're bad because you don't. And I think if we take religion away from a lot of things, we take away a lot of judgment. We start to see people and say, I accept that person for who they are. I accept that person for who they are. I accept that person for who they are. They're not hurting anyone. Why the hell do I care? And that's it. That's the only thing.
Go ahead.
No, I was done.
That's one of the reasons why I have such a tremendous amount of respect for my wife, who is a believer, because my wife is a believer, but she doesn't believe in a hell. She doesn't go to church on a regular basis, and she believes everybody's going to be in heaven, because she believes her God to be just, and she's not like, you're doing something wrong, you're not a believer, you're going to go down. She's not like that, and it's what I like about her pastor. Her pastor is very open, engaging guy. He's kind of like the unofficial pastor of our town. Whenever there's an incident, the village calls him in. There are gay couples in the pews. There are multiracial couples in the pews. He doesn't give a damn about your life. All he gives a damn about is making sure that people hear what he believes to be the word of God. And then he goes out and he helps the community. And from that aspect, I'm like, cool. That's why when I had my landscape company, I did landscaping at the church for free, because it's the church that my wife attended, and because he's not out there pushing his religion on everybody else. And so I really liked it. But I agree with you. I think some of the most divisive issues that we have among us they're divisive because they're based in religious belief, right? The abortion debate, the gay marriage debate, it's all based on some misguided view of some religious text. Well, my God says that gay people are going to burn in hell. My God says that a man can't lay with a man. Well, my God says this and my God says this. And then it seeps down into the political realm. And then we start separating into our little groups of people. Well, I believe this and I believe that. And here we are, we're at each other's throats, when at the end of the day, I think if more people, instead of saying, what denomination are you? What political party are you? Who did you vote for? Right out of the gate, if somebody said to somebody else, hey, what is it you want out of life? I think what we would find is that 99.9% of the time, most of the people that you're going to ask that question to are going to want the same thing you want out of life. They're going to want a peaceful place to live. They're going to want a safe place to raise their family. They're going to want to be able to go to work, earn their money, and then be left alone. We just differ on how we go about getting to that point. And it's those differences that have crept into the forefront. Instead of saying, what do we want out of life in the beginning, we say, well, what party are you? Who did you vote for? What church do you attend? What God do you worship? We look for the things that make us different instead of the things that make us the same. It's one of the reasons I think, I'm a pretty big Deadhead. I'm a big Grateful Dead fan, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's one of the reasons why I love the Grateful Dead. We call it the tribe, the family, is because when I would go to a Grateful Dead show, and this is really true of a lot of different acts, not just the Grateful Dead, obviously. What you see in the audience is you see rich next to poor, white next to black, man next to woman, straight next to gay. And you ask yourself, well, how are we so damn divided? But this can happen. And then you realize it's because everybody there is there for the same reason. They're there to celebrate life. They're alive. The music is getting into them. And so they're there celebrating whatever their life may be. And it's completely different from the person standing right next to them. But they're all there celebrating life. And we've gotten away from that. We've gotten away from that because we allow these things to get in and cause these wedges. I allowed them to cause wedges in my life for many, many years, thinking that I was better than this person, or this person belonged doing this, and this person belonged in the kitchen, and this person belonged serving my food. And it's like, that's not, we're all the same, man.
Yeah.
We're all the same. And once we get that damn religious text and we start going, well, but you did this, and it says right here, you shouldn't do that. We get away from what we are. And as a non-believer, it just drives me nuts because I don't have a side, right? My God's not better than your God, because my God is the earth that we're standing on. You know what I mean? I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's my God, the earth that we came from. And so I just don't understand how somebody can look at somebody at this point in my life and hate them because they don't believe the same thing they believe.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing to me that we've allowed this to happen to us as a species, and more so here. Man, in the last 50 years, we have just put a wedge in between everybody in this country. Well, you're on this side and you're on this side. Didn't used to be that way. I never knew. I don't know how old you are, but I never knew who my parents voted for.
Yeah.
They talk about it.
I don't know how much mine did. I'm 49. I'll be 50 in March, and I don't know if they voted or not. Honestly, I don't remember really. But politics was never talked about in our house. Like it was never, I think we were busy trying to, find how we're gonna bathe feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, and all that. But I feel like if you look at our Congress people, and you could say this on the left and the right, I do think the left are more trying to do things for the American people. But when you look at the right, for instance, I don't know. Their leaders are just, it's all about division. I mean, I feel like you take your Marjorie Taylor Greene, your Lauren Boebert, your Matt Gaetz, these people wake up every day and the first thing they do is they think, what is the most divisive shit I can write on Twitter, Instagram, or whatever? And then they go on there and they do it. And every day, it's never, I mean, what has the Republican Congress done for like one single American? Like we've been impeachment inquiry and, you know, just hateful things. And like, I don't know, just, I don't see a lot from them.
Even far right-wing Republican from Texas, Chip Roy, stood on the floor of the House and chastised his own party and said, we're entering an election year, and I have nothing I can go back to my constituents and run on because we've done nothing. They're not interested in legislating. They're interested in holding on to power and proving that government is dysfunctional by making it dysfunctional.
Yes.
When government isn't dysfunctional. It can work for the American people. It has worked for the American people in certain ways. And all they're interested in doing is securing the next voting bloc, the next group of voters. I mean, you talk about it. You talk about Trump's desperation for the black vote.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we see that in all areas. Like he just went to the Libertarian National Convention. Why? He's desperate for the votes.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes out there, and like many other politicians, and I've said every politician from the president of the United States down to somebody on your local town board, to some degree is a liar, to some degree has to sell you a line of bullshit. But when you get on these levels with Trump, I mean, what's the line of bullshit that you see him selling? For example, the black community. I saw the line of bullshit he sold the libertarians, you know, but discuss that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's offensive to me. It's absolutely offensive. I made a video about, you know, Donald Trump and his sons out there saying that, Donald Trump, black people, they understand Donald Trump because they've been, treated bad by the system as well. Well, when Colin Kaepernick kneeled to say we're being treated bad by the system, Donald Trump, that was his moment to say, you know what? I need to sit down with this man and talk to him. But he didn't, because they don't care about how the black community has been treated by the system. They just care about votes. And so it's offensive to me to hear these people say that, black people understand him because he has a mugshot, or black people understand him because he's been indicted and he's being treated unfairly by the criminal justice system. Like, no, man. Like, Donald Trump's problems with the criminal justice system are nowhere near like ours. Like, you're talking about white collar crimes. Like, no one stopped and frisked you. You didn't get pulled over by the police because of the color of your skin. You're not being, manhandled because, someone thinks because you're wearing a hoodie that you're a threat to them. You were indicted by multiple grand juries. You are getting your chance in court. Black people resonate with someone who has been shot by the cops unlawfully. We resonate with people who've been followed around a grocery store for no reason, who've had the cops called on them for walking through their neighborhood. Donald Trump, it's offensive that he says this, and that there are black conservatives out there that are banging the drum and agreeing with this bull crap. That is, and again, like you said, it's desperation, and it seems to be working on some people. Like you talked about the libertarian thing. He went there and he said he's gonna pardon Ross Ulbricht. You think he knew who that guy was before about 5 minutes of going on stage? It's like, this guy will say anything that he thinks will garner a couple of votes. That's it. He'll say anything, and it doesn't matter who he like lies to or panders to or whatever. And it's like, if you look at, I believe all you can do is look at people's body of work, right? You look at their history. Donald Trump was going to build a wall and Mexico was going to pay for it. That never happened. He was going to lock Hillary Clinton up. That never happened. He was going to have the best healthcare plan ever. That never happened. If you could go back and he's going to commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht. He's going to Rita J. Sixers. Ross Ulbricht has been in prison since 2014.
Why didn't you do it before?
Exactly.
Yeah.
January 6th, he's done nothing for them. Like, you barely hear him talk about them now. That was the cool thing to talk about, a couple of months ago. Now people have kind of forgotten about them, so he's moved on to something else. This guy goes out and gets these damn gold sneakers, and you have these talking heads saying that, oh, Black people like those sneakers. I mean, you know how offensive it is for this guy to stand up there and say the only reason Black people relate to him is because he has some flashy shoes and a damn rap sheet.
Yep.
Like, any Black who's okay with that is crazy.
And what they don't see is what I didn't see for the longest time, which was I never had any of the issues that people in this country had to deal with, right? People were not afraid to hire me. People didn't cross the street when they saw me coming. Old ladies didn't clutch their purse. It was, to me, that was just, man, the world is normal. I never had to experience that shit. This guy got to walk into a courthouse and get fingerprinted and get booked in and have his mugshot taken, when, with all due respect, somebody like yourself has to inform the cop that he's reaching for his wallet. I never had to experience that, man. I'm a straight, middle-aged, middle American white man in middle America, right? Nobody was ever, I didn't think, if I got pulled over by the cops, I didn't think twice about just reaching for the glove compartment. Oh yeah, the insurance card's in here, right? I never had to teach my kids, don't ever reach for the damn glove compartment. You stay still with your hands on the table. This guy got to walk in, bitch to a bunch of cameras, and then get fingerprinted. He doesn't even realize his own privilege, man.
No.
It's something that took me years to understand, that, and people go, well, privilege, you had to work your ass off. You worked a blue collar job your whole life. That's not what privilege is, man. Privilege means that all of those doors, here, this is the one thing I always explain to people when it comes to privilege. So I worked in the landscape industry. So I worked predominantly around Hispanic immigrants, predominantly Mexican immigrants that were undocumented. And don't get me wrong, I will pat myself on the back. I was damn good at what I did. There was a reason why I was able to be successful and win awards and eventually have my own landscape company and things of that nature. But the opportunities to get there were presented to me very plainly. We're moving you from working foreman to project manager because you're the kind of person that the customers want to talk to. They don't want to talk to a Mexican guy with an accent. They don't want to talk to a Mexican guy who can barely speak the language. They want to talk to a white guy that speaks English, that makes them feel comfortable. So we're moving you up the ladder. And people are like, oh, you misunderstood that. Well, how the hell did I misunderstood it? That was literally what I was told. We're moving you up the ladder because you're a white guy that's easy to look at and talk to. That's the privilege that I was handled. And that's the privilege that Donald Trump was born with. The dude was born on third base. Mm-hmm. And nobody see. And what blows my mind is that the people who vote for him are like me. They're like you. They grew up rough. They grew up poor. They had to work for everything they had. And I would dare say that if we could invent a time machine and go back to 10 years before Donald Trump announced he was running for president, 90% of the people that wound up voting for him in 2016, if you could go back and find each one of them and talk to them and go, would you ever vote for Donald Trump if he ran for president? They'd all look at you and go, you mean that New York East Coast elitist that shits on a gold toilet? Never in a million years.
Yeah.
But along comes Donald Trump and he goes, those people are the reason why your lot in life is what it is. Those people came for your jobs. Those people get free handouts from the government. Those people get preferential treatment. And you have all of these different groups of, if we're going to be very plain and simple about this, all of these different groups of white people that hate a certain group of people. These people hate black people, and these people hate brown people, and these people hate women that have a brain and can think for themselves. And then the Donald Trump comes along and he identified, I hate the same people that you hate. And all of a sudden, it is a coalition of hate.
Yeah.
And America's political cult is formed not because we identify with Donald Trump, not because they look at Donald Trump as one of their own. They look at him and they go, yeah, he's going to get rid of those people that we want to get rid of.
Yeah.
And what those hats really should say is make America white again.
Yeah. Yeah. And they do. You're right. They believe that let's just be real here. Nothing is going to be done for them. Just like nothing was done for them 4 years ago. That man did nothing for them. Nothing is going to be done for them. But they somehow, I mean, they've gotten to a point now that just him being there is going to make them feel like things have been done for them. But nothing's going to be done for them because he doesn't actually care about them. But you're right. They think that they are struggling in life because a lot of them are. I mean, they go to some of these really podunk areas where people are struggling and they're like, we want Donald Trump, because they do believe that if Hispanics weren't here and if Black people weren't here, they would have more. And that's just not how the world is working. Like our society depends on people like them being in the position that they're in. It is not a society that's built on, for the most part, getting everyone to like have a certain level of living. And it's sad because I look at people and I think classism, obviously racism is a big thing, but I think classism is like the fact that you take a white person who is like not doing as well as I am, and they still look down on me,
Yeah.
and that I'm where I am because, affirmative action got me there, or DEI got me there, it's just like, wow, and that's, another thing, probably topic we could talk about is the whole, that's a part of it, right? Like they think if you are a successful Black person, somehow someone helped you along the way.
Yeah.
You didn't do it on your own, or you weren't able to get there and everything. And like, I can honestly say for me, what helped me along the way was how fast I could run. That got me into the college doors, right? And then after that, it was me just working my tail off. And you kind of alluded to, white privilege does not mean that white people don't struggle at all. Doesn't mean that white people don't struggle. It just means that you don't struggle because of the color of your skin. Like no one has ever said, we're holding you back because you're white, or I don't want this guy to get an interview because they're white. And even with, another thing I have to explain to a lot of people, even with DEI and affirmative action, it probably raised your hiring and things like that, like a percentage point. Like it literally doesn't, you still will not go to your largest companies and see just a bunch of Black people or Hispanic people working there, because these companies are owned by white CEOs typically, and they're still hiring a lot of white people. So none of these things have basically changed anything. And most of us are just fighting for those things to happen, for things to change so that everyone actually has an opportunity to get a piece of the American dream that we're all promised of all the time.
The whole white privilege thing, it means that 30 years ago, 35 years ago, you and I apply for the same job, I'm going to be considered more often than you are simply because of the color of my skin. That's what it means. It doesn't mean I was born into a rich family and therefore I have a whole bunch of advantages. And the DEI thing, the problem with the DEI thing, and you see it all the time now, that the phrase DEI is in the forefront of the lexicon. The people on the far right, they associate DEI with also being unqualified.
Yes.
You only got the job because you're Black. You only got the job because you're a woman. You only got the job because you're Hispanic. No. What DEI means is we are going to take a pool of qualified people and make sure from that pool of qualified people that we are representing as many people as humanly possible. It doesn't mean we're going to go out into there and find the most unqualified Black woman we can possibly find to put in the vice president's office. It means out of all of these qualified people, hey, you know what we've never had in this country? A Black vice president. How about we give that a try with somebody who's qualified? That's what it means, but not to the people on the right. The people on the right look at somebody like yourself and they go, oh, you're a successful Black man? Must have gotten there through some type of program. Must have got there through some type of program. Okay, well then how did I get to own my own landscape company? Well, you worked your butt off. You worked your butt off for 20 years and you saved your money and you went out and started your company. Okay, but I was able to save my money because I was able to move up the ladder faster because of the color of my skin. Otherwise, I might have spent 15, 16, 17 years as a laborer. Who the hell knows? And they just don't put that together. They don't put their own bigotry together, and they don't put together the fact that whatever their lot in life is, whatever, they're living in some impoverished neighborhood, their house is run down, their life didn't turn out the way they wanted it to. It's got nothing to do with you. See,
Yeah.
I was always taught that it was because, like you said, somebody like yourself made something, they got more than you got. They got more than I got. Then why are they living in the slums? Why, one of my favorite songs is from BB King, called "Why I Sing the Blues," and one of the lines, he talks about the various plights that the black man has gone through over the course of his life, and he talks about how I laid cold and numb in the flats, and I heard the bed bugs say to the rats, "Save the roaches some," And he talks about his his plight in life, and I thought to myself, man, I had that same childhood. We were dirt poor. I remember the mouse traps all over the house. I remember, going to bed hungry. So what makes it different? Well, then I grew up and realized what made it different. What made it different was the color of my skin. And so, like, I don't quite know how to right some of those wrongs. I don't quite know the best course of action. So all I know I can do is, for whatever reason, a whole bunch of people have decided to follow my platform, and a whole bunch of people have decided to sign on and watch my content. So all I can do is use my content to point out the wrongs of the past, to point out, hey, this is not the way it's supposed to happen. And it's something that you talk about being, and it's something that I am admittedly hesitant to be, and that is an advocate, right? You talk about the importance of advocacy. I think it's important to use my voice. If I can garner 1.5 million people that want to listen to what I have to say, well, then damn it, I'm going to tell them what I believe is right and wrong. But how do I go out and advocate for people that I have wronged in my past? Where do I begin? Can you talk a little bit about the importance in your life of advocacy?
I think the importance. So if you're asking like yourself, right? I think being someone that calls out racism, bigotry is very important. I'm an advocate. I realize as a Black man who is educated and successful, who has had the opportunity to travel and do a lot of things with my life. I tell my daughters all the time, like, you guys are privileged. You may not see it that way because you're still Black, but you're privileged. I can recognize my privilege myself at this point. There are a lot of things that I am fortunate to have and fortunate to do because of my status in my community. So I recognize that privilege, and I use that privilege myself to advocate for people who are less privileged. So I advocate for, the gay community. I advocate for, the homeless community. I advocate for, Black people, Hispanic people, women. And I think the way you do that is you have to be outwardly vocal about these things. Like, I refuse to allow bigotry, hate, misogyny to be within my presence. And that's not just on a personal level, but that's like globally. Like, if I see it at my school that I teach at, if I see it, in my community newsletter or anything like that, like, I am always going to call that out. I think we need to make people feel uncomfortable being comfortable with their racism and their hate and their bigotry. We have to. So, I made a video recently. It got like 700 views, but I'm going to post it on Instagram pretty soon because I'm going to redo it. But it's about a girl I grew up with who is a racist. I found this out a few weeks ago when she called a girl who is now dating her ex-husband. She called her kids the N-word. Like, I have the video of her doing it. And I struggle with this because like I watched like Dinesh, for instance, right? He exposes people. They lose their jobs, their livelihood, everything. Struggle with doing that in my small community. But then since hearing this stuff, new things have come to me. And I'm like, you know what? People need to know that you don't get to do that. You don't get to use the N-word at people. You don't get to call people the words she's saying, her friend is saying. You don't get to use those terms against people. And just, I called her out on it myself. I sent her a message on Facebook. She apologized to me for it, but then made a bunch of excuses about why she did it. Then said, I would never be racist toward you. And I'm like, you don't get it. Like, being racist toward Black people is being racist toward me. But this video is going to expose her business, the other girl who works at her business, who called this girl's kids, other derogatory terms and everything. And I just think we have to make it so that people know, when you do these things, there's going to be severe and swift accountability. That's the only way things are going to change. People have to be uncomfortable being comfortable with their bigotry and their hate and their racism. And that's what I think advocates need to be focused on, is like obviously going back to the community too. I do a lot of volunteer working with youth and things like that. I train a lot of kids for free. I get around, I coach. I think going into the community and helping is important, but I think the easiest way to be an advocate is to make sure that you don't allow people to be bigots, hateful, misogynists, whatever, in your presence.
I got two more questions for you, and the first one is it's just an intriguing thing for me. So, on my mother's side of the family, I'm Sicilian. My grandfather on my mother's side was born in Sicily and immigrated here when he was a young boy. On my father's side of the family, they've been in here in the country for generations, and they're all Southern Indiana hillbillies. So I'm half Sicilian, half hillbilly.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, I can lose my cool at the drop of a hat. I am just I see some people say to me all the time on TikTok, "You're so calm, you're so cool. I can't believe you keep your patience when dealing with these people." And I keep telling them all the time, that's because you get to see the 2 minutes I choose for you to see. Mm-hmm. You don't see before, when I go, "This mother," and I'm thinking, how do you remain? And I'm not even one of the people that's being oppressed in this country. How do you remain calm in the face of all of this?
At the end of the day, honestly, I love my wife and my kids, and I do love my life. I really do. I love what I do for a living. I love coaching. I love teaching. I learned that I'm in my 20th year as a professor at a community college.
Congratulations.
I learned early on that I can't take these things home with me. Can't let them affect how I am with my wife and my children. And I have found that my delivery seems to work for a lot of people. And so I'm going to be honest with you. I rarely get mad about harm done to people, like real harm. But when I'm talking about some of these topics, I turn the camera on, I talk about them, I turn the camera off, I go about my business. I'm too busy. I have 2 daughters that are both in college, that are running track. I have a wife that teaches. I have, 70 student athletes every year. I have 4 classes with, 150 kids in them. I don't have time to take those angers anywhere, so I choose not to have them. Now, who knows? I could be suppressing them and I just blow up one day. Who knows, but right now I truly do my life is good. My wife, my kids are good. And I'm enjoying that.
Well, I got to tell you, it is very admirable seeing somebody be so calm in the face of the insanity. It's one of the things that I asked V from Under the Desk News when I had her on this podcast, because she is one of those people that just remains calm in the face of the, you talk about, you tend to get more worked up when you see harm being done. Mm-hmm. And I get worked up at the sheer stupidity of some of the things that people come to me with and present me with. And it's like, but you can't possibly believe that. You can't tell me that that's really what you. And then I got to calm down, and then I got to hit record, and I got to calmly talk about the issue at hand and go ahead and put it out there for the general public, and then shut it off. My wife works right across the hallway in her home office, and I'll shut it off and I'll go, "Can you believe these motherfuckers?" And I'm just this. I just want to say that I admire the fact that it is a true calmness that comes from people like yourself and V, Whereas mine is, I gotta calm down, and then I do my recording. Now,
Thank you.
speaking of the recordings, how has TikTok changed your life?
Gosh, it is, it's opened a couple of doors for me. It's funny. If I were still doing the dancing and all that videos, I'd probably have those same doors open in other areas. There's a creator that I follow, and he still does those. He does a lot of like dad jokes and funny things and stuff like that. And the guy is killing it. And sometimes I wish I would have stayed on that path because there's a little stress that comes with this stuff. But it's opened some doors. Obviously I have a YouTube page that's okay. Midas Touch guys, I do a lot for them. It's been good. Sometimes I have to watch myself with the content, because sometimes you get excited about things and you do something, and I really try to do a good job of like making sure I research the topics, and I'm not misinforming anyone. So that part becomes tough, but I just came off a few months of not doing a lot of content. So now it's summer break, so you're gonna see like a lot of content from me now. But then once school starts again, I'm back down to like maybe try to knock out a video every 3 days or something. But there was a time in there where I'm doing 3 videos a day easily, and I'm talking not just like I'm talking like research videos where I have a video that I'm responding to and all of that. But my friend, he really likes my content. He really likes to watch my YouTube and stuff. He's like, man, you've been kind of silent lately, And this guy's like, a close friend of mine. I'm like, you can get this information from other people, or you can just call me and we can talk about it. And he's like, nah, I just like to, sit at home at night and watch the videos, and kind of this is how I get my news and everything. So I was telling him today, I'm like, yeah, I got to get back on the roll. I'm kind of out of we're doing a lot of stuff right now just for fun. So I need to get back kind of on my roll and start doing these videos more. But TikTok is definitely, as much as it has become horribly just, I don't know what's going on with the algorithm, but I see a lot of my creator friends like yourself and others. And I'm like, how do these people have 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, followers, and they're getting no views? I was just on, I'm going to forget, Thomas is, not Tom, gosh, black guy with the really good voice.
The villain?
Yes. Is it
Thomas Bishop, the villain, Thomas the Villain Bishop, yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I was just, for some reason, I was just on his page, and I'm like, how's this guy getting no views? It's ridiculous. So I'm trying to build my YouTube platform because it's much better there, so that I want to be able to do kind of what Midas Touch is doing. Tennessee Brando, if you've seen him, he's built a pretty good platform on YouTube. We want to be able to give other creators the ability to grow on YouTube by using our growth on there, like the way Midas Touch has given me. And because it's, I don't know what TikTok is doing, but it's horrible over here. It just really is.
Well, I can tell you, so before we wrap up here, from the algorithm standpoint, what I've noticed, and I've been doing TikToks since just after January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And in December of 2020, and then after January 6th, I was like, okay, we got to start talking about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll make 30 in a day.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make 20, 30 videos a day. And the views are down, no doubt about it. But there are also a billion accounts on this platform. And it's like, not everybody gets to be on the For You page at the same time, is one of the things I've learned. And so when my views at 1.4 million followers, when I look up and I go, I got 1,200 views on my last 20 videos, I know it's down in the valley. But then in a couple of days' times, it'll come back up, and then it'll go down and it'll come back up. It's really weird. Yes, building those other platforms are crucial, and they are important. Something that I need to work on is building my my YouTube platform. But from my own standpoint, I absolutely love the content you're putting out on TikTok. I don't want you to stop doing it. So, if you do wipe it, I'll follow your daughter. But for the record, I don't want you to wipe it. I like for you to stay where you're at.
Yeah.
And I think that you're a very positive influence on the platform, on what is otherwise, admittedly, an extraordinarily toxic platform.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think that you are a very positive voice. I like what you're doing, and I see somebody like yourself, and I wonder, why doesn't he have 1.4 million followers? Because he's giving a positive view of things. So don't ever stop doing what you're doing. I love it. Tell everybody where they can find you on all the various platforms, please.
Yeah. So on YouTube, I'm now at Coach D Spoke. Had to change my name on there. On everything else, it's still Coach D Speaks or the Coach D Speaks on Instagram, on TikTok and everything. So yeah, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you having me on here too. And like with you, likewise, man. Love your content, love what you're doing. I really do love the platform for the people, the relationships that I've gotten out of it. Because, I just feel like sometimes, I think the first time you reached out to me was to ask me about some information that someone had shared with you that you wanted to, I think maybe someone was accusing you of something. And I've had a couple of my white friend content creators reach out to me about stuff like that. And that's what I love about the platform, is I've made some really good relationships on this platform, and that's invaluable to me. So I appreciate you having.
I remember being accused of being racist because I used the term baby daddy.
Yeah. Yep. That's what it was.
I said, well, I never thought of it as being a racist term. So here's what I'm going to do as somebody that grew up in a different world. I'm going to reach out to people in that community, and I'm going to ask them what their thoughts are on this. Is this something I shouldn't be saying anymore? Because if it is, well, that's something that I didn't realize, and it's something that I should take out of my lexicon. And if it isn't, then I know somebody's arguing just to argue.
Yeah.
Coach, I absolutely dig what you do. If you're ever in the Chicagoland area, let me know. Maybe we'll have a hot dog or a beef sandwich together.
That'd be awesome.
You keep doing what you're doing, man, and thank you very much for coming out here.
Thank you for having me.
Say hi to the family.
Definitely will. You too.
Take it easy now.